Right, so this is for lesson 4.1 on degrees, radians, and revolutions. Lesson Master 4.1. It's the third video. Number 1 and 2 says for letter A, convert the magnitude to revolutions. Notice that it's in degrees, which is a magnitude. Or number 2, it's in radians, which is also a magnitude. All right, so to revolutions, first of all, the fact that it's negative tells me that it's clockwise. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down right away. That the negative tells me that it's clockwise. And then in order to figure out how much of a revolution it is, I'm going to do 225 divided by 360. I'll use my calculator for that. And I get 0.625. And I guess I could say 0.625 revolutions. Or if I wanted to, I could go to math, enter, enter, and that's 5/8. So 5/8 or 0.625 revolutions clockwise. All right. So the part B says on the circle, draw the image of the given point under the rotation. So I start here, I'm going to go clockwise 225 degrees. I know that this is 180 degrees, so that's halfway. If I want another 90, that would be 270. So I know that the 225 has to be somewhere in between the 180 and the 270. So I'm just going to put that right about there. And it would go around to around there. Not exactly there, but close. All right, so for number 2, 7 pi over 2, that's positive. Therefore, that's going to be counterclockwise. And that's because it's positive. And then to figure out how much of a revolution, I'm going to take 7 pi over 2 and divide by 2 pi. Over here I divided by 360 because I was dealing in degrees. Over here I'm going to divide by 2 pi because I'm working with radians. And in order to divide by 2 pi, I'm going to multiply by 1 over 2 pi, because to divide is to multiply by the reciprocal. The pi's cancel, and I get 7/4. So 7/4 revolution counterclockwise. All right, again, I'm supposed to draw the image using this point here. I'm going to go counterclockwise, so I'm going to go the other direction, and 7/4 is very close to 8/4, which would be 2 revolutions. So I would want to go all the way around once. That's 4/4 of a revolution. And then 3/4 from there would be right about here is where I would land. So on my second time around, I would land right there, going counterclockwise. Right. Number 3, give 2 other magnitudes in degrees. So it's going to be in degrees, 1 positive and 1 negative for a rotation of 152 degrees. All right, so if I want to have a rotation that's 152 degrees, to find another positive one, I could just go around the circle again and I'd still be at 152. So I could just say 152 and add 360, meaning go all the way around the circle again. And when I take 152 and I add 360, I get 512 degrees. If I wanted to have the same rotation and have it be negative, I could go around the circle all the way, but go in the negative direction, so 152 degrees. minus 360 degrees. And that's the same as negative 208 degrees. All right. Give two other magnitudes, one in radians and one positive and one negative, for a rotation of 5 pi over 6. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm at 5 pi over 6. If I just go one full rotation, which would be 2 pi, that would give me another positive one. So just going around the circle again lands me in the exact same spot. Now when you add fractions, you can't just add the top and add the bottom. You need a common denominator, so I would have 5 pi over 6 plus 12 pi over 6, because 12 divided by 6 is 2. I just gave them the common denominator of 6, and I end up with 17 pi over 6. I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to take 5 pi over 6 and subtract 2 pi, go the other direction around the circle, and I end up with 5 pi over 6 minus 12 pi over 6, and I get negative 7 pi over 6. In 5 through 7, we can use a calculator if we need to, but we're going to convert to radians. So remember, we're going to multiply by pi over 180. So I've got 30 times pi over 180, which gives me 30 over 180 pi. I can divide by 10, which cancels out my zeros, and I'm left with 3 over 18, which is the same as 1/6 pi. Sometimes we like to just simply write that as pi over 6 as another way. So I could either write it as 1/6 pi or pi over 6. All right, for number 6, I've got 45 times pi over 180, which gives me 45 over 180 pi. If I'm doing this without a calculator, they can both be divided by 5, and that's going to give me 9 pi on the top, and then 180 divided by 5. I'm going to do this off to the side. 5 goes into 18 3 times. It gives me 15 and 6, so I get 36. Well, 9 over 36 I know is 1/4, or pi over 4. I could have also just said 1/4 pi. Negative 240 degrees. Again, I multiply by pi over 180, and I end up with negative 240 over 180 pi. Divide by 10, my zeros cancel out, and I'm left with negative 24 over 18. Well, both 24 and 18 can be divided by 6, so I get negative 4 over 3 pi. That's my final answer for number 7. Right, let's go on to number 8, pi over 10. Now we're converting to degrees. So I'm multiplying by 180 over pi this time. The pi's cancel because I have 1 in the numerator and 1 in the denominator, and I'm left with 180 over 10. Well, they can both be divided by 10, and I'm left with simply 18 degrees. Negative 11 pi over 6. So I'm going to multiply by 180 over pi. Again, the pi's cancel. Remember I said before, it's best if you divide before you multiply. 180 divided by 6 is 30. So I'm left with 30. And now I'm left with negative 11 times 30. Well, negative 11 times 3 is negative 33, And because it's times 30, I'm going to add a 0 to the end there, and I get negative 330 degrees. I notice right here that this 3.14159 is pi, so I'm taking pi and multiplying it by 180 over pi, and the pi's cancel, and I simply get 180 degrees. All right. It says convert the magnitude to the indicated unit to the nearest thousandth. So we're not looking for exact answers, we can get decimal answers. Degrees, when I'm converting to revolutions, negative 37 degrees is going to be divided by 360 degrees, and that will give me my revolutions. I'm going to use my calculator. Negative 37 divided by 360. And I get negative 0.103 revolutions. Now I'm going to convert to radians. In order to convert to radians, I need to take negative 37 degrees and multiply by pi over 180. So I'm left with negative 37. Actually, what I can do, since this is all to the nearest thousand, I'm just going to type into my calculator negative 37 times pi and then I need to divide that by 180. And I get negative 0.646, and that's radians. Right, 17 pi to revolutions. Since this is in radians right now, to convert to revolutions, when it was in degrees, I divided by 360. When it's in radians, I divide by 2 pi. So 17 pi divided by 2 pi. Pi's cancel, and 17 divided by 2 is 8.5 revolutions. Converting to degrees, I take 17 pi and I multiply by 180 divided by pi. The pi's cancel, and I'm simply going to put into my calculator 17 times 180. Make sure you do that in your calculator, and I get 3,060 degrees. Next one, 17 revolutions counterclockwise. These are going to be positive answers. 2 degrees. So 17 revolutions in degrees would be 17 times 360. So I do 17 times 360, and that is 6,120 degrees. If I convert that to radians, not convert that, but I take 17 revolutions to radians, that's 17 times 2 pi. Remember, 360 and 2 pi are equivalent. They're just different types of measure, and I get 34 pi. Lastly, I have 0.3 repeating, which is 1/3 clockwise. That means it's going to be negative 2 degrees. So I have 1/3 of a revolution, and I'm converting that to degrees. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did up here in number 13. I'm going to take 1/3 and multiply it by 360 degrees, but I've got to remember it's a negative 1/3 because of clockwise, and these can both be divided by 3, and I get negative 120 degrees. In radians, I would have negative 1/3, and I'd multiply by 2 pi, and I'd get negative 2 pi over 3. Please notice in all the different problems, like in 13 and 14, if you're multiplying by 360 to convert to degrees, you're multiplying by 2 pi to convert to radians. Here we multiplied by 360 because we're using degrees. Here we multiplied by 2 pi because we're going to radians.